Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here I'm joined with Steve Doyle. He's the CEO of EVA Recruitment. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on our interview today.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris.
So, tell us a little bit more about what your company actually does in the industry.
Okay, so Avira Recruitment is, as its name suggests, a recruitment agency. And what we're here to do is to provide a very technical service, a very detailed technical service for the EV and the battery markets. Um, we are all moving towards electric vehicles, as the government announced last week. By 2030, there will be no more wholly internal combustion engine vehicles, and from 2035 onwards, all EVs, which is fantastic news, and that's great, and we applaud it. However, we've got a big gap. We've got a lot of work to do, and for the UK automotive industry in particular, we've got to retrain and refocus and reapply all of those engineers that are used to designing engines and gearboxes and fuel pumps and oil filters and manifolds and exhaust systems, and refocus that energy into batteries and power electronics and electric drive trains. So there's a lot of work to be done. We are particularly involved in the gigafactory industry as well, which is where the actual battery cells are made. So these are the building blocks of all electric power packs. That obviously is going to be a huge industry as well. The government's forecasting between 8 and 15 gigafactories will be in planning or construction phase by 2030 as well. But when you're recruiting for a gigafactory, it's not an easy thing to do because we don't have gigafactories yet. So at Avira, we have got the skills and the knowledge to bring people in from partner industries. So we're here to plug that gap. It's a hyper niche technical recruitment agency.
Brilliant. So that's great to know, and you gave a little bit of insight as to how the market's moving as well. In this respect, how would you see the EV market kind of transcribing in terms of for recruitment, or shall I say, in terms of the job market? Do you see more jobs being in the field because now we're going to get more electric vehicles on our roads? Do you see that changing in terms of recruitment side? Have you seen more of a demand from manufacturers or production plants that are asking for more specialized people?
It's definitely increasing at a rate. You know, to use a COVID terminology, the rate is definitely above one at the moment. I've been involved in the EV and the battery market for probably about 15 years now. Particularly got involved around about 2008 when we had the last recession. I stopped focusing on powertrain and transmission recruitment and very much turned that towards power electronics and high voltage electrical systems. And in the last 2 or 3 years, really focused on batteries. So for me personally, I have seen a lot of recruitment in the last decade into these teams. There were some very early adopters in this area. So McLaren, for instance, made the McLaren P1 a hybrid. Ron Dennis decided with about 18 months to go before launch that he wanted the car to be a hybrid. So we helped to build that hybrid team. Similarly, at Jaguar Land Rover, they already have, the I-Pace out on the roads. The work started on that probably the best part of 10 years ago. So it's not a new thing, but it is definitely accelerating, and particularly in the gigafactory side of things. The building blocks, the cells that you need to make these battery packs, there is a global shortage. The demand is outstripping the supply, and we need a manufacturing base in the UK to make cells to support our local automotive industry.
Absolutely, and so you see a few gigafactories being built. Obviously, there's quite a few in China. There's some in the US, obviously with the use of Tesla's own gigafactories over there, and the ones in around Europe. So in the UK, I know you said that we don't actually have a gigafactory. Is there plans of building gigafactories that you've seen, or you see that potentially manufacturers will be swayed to build plants in the UK given more demand for electric vehicles, or just alternative fuel vehicles?
So in the UK, Nissan built a battery facility up in the northeast, which was sold on to AESC. So that's sort of like a small gigafactory, should we say. There are two schools of thought. either the OEMs, the car manufacturers, will make their own cells, or the cells will be made by the suppliers. So for instance, if you take the I-Pace, it has LG cells in it. Can the OEMs rely on those suppliers to constantly give them the technology that they need to go in those cells so that their vehicles are world class, or do they want to own that part of the process? That's one question. So the problem that we have with that is, if you become a cell manufacturer, if the OEM becomes a cell manufacturer, the R&D that goes into the battery chemistries, it can compete with how much you're putting into actually developing the vehicles themselves. So where Tesla have probably set the precedent, as in, we're going to build gigafactories and we'll build a car plant and a battery plant in conjunction, and we'll make the cells and the cars together, we've all sort of assumed that that would be the natural path that the OEMs would take. However, it doesn't seem to be that way. You look at what Nissan have done in the Northeast, they've sold off the plant. You know, I can't quote numbers, but I know that the investment that goes into the R&D on the electrochemistry side starts to outweigh what you're actually spending on developing the vehicles. It becomes your purpose for being, it becomes your main overhead. My thought at the moment, my feelings is for at least the foreseeable future, it's going to move towards a tier one model. I think the battery cells will be made by tier ones. The big players, Samsung, LG, Panasonic, Apple, are all over in South Korea, Japan, China. We need manufacturers in the UK. We need manufacturers in Europe. At the end of 2015, we had 5 gigafactories in planning or construction phase globally. My understanding, as we sit here today and talk, there are 167 gigafactories in planning or construction phase throughout the world. Within the UK, the first big name down is British Volt, and British Volt are making a huge commitment to build a plant or plants in the UK. They've brought together a fantastic team of people, some of the best, most technically competent people within the battery industry are already employed by British Volt, and we're helping them to build their team. Without the people, you don't have a business, and that is what we're here to do, is to help British Volt to bring all those people on board.
Brilliant. And in terms of the transferable skills, so there is, as you said, it's not say a new industry, it's been there for a while, but for those people who are working in the more traditional combustion engine type of things, or even in other type of industries, how transferable are those skills? Because you said you've got a bit of a background in terms of production as well, but so where's the transferable skills there?
So my degree was in production engineering, and that's all about how to make things. With regards to transferable skills, you've got two sides. You've got the designing and the development of the battery systems, and then you've got the manufacturing of the battery systems. The likes of Jaguar Land Rover, McLaren, Lotus, these people have been designing and developing battery modules and packs for many years, and there has been a gradual migration of their engineers into those sorts of skill sets. From a manufacturing perspective, we've been making modules and packs in the UK for many years. What we haven't done is made the actual cells, the small cells, and that's where it gets complicated. The manufacturing processes that go into cells are nothing like anything else that you see. The production line goes from metallic powder handling into slurries and pastes, into deposition, making of anodes and cathodes, which are in effect very, very thin foils. They're dried, they're rolled, they're put into bags with electrolyte liquids in. The closest that I've seen in the UK is making a Kit Kat, which sounds like a joke, but it's true. If you look at the process of making a Kit Kat, where you take cocoa powder, you make it into pastes, you put it into molds, it goes through ovens, there is an assembly process with wafers. It's wrapped very, very high speed in very highly automated manufacturing lines, very clean, hygienic, very, very clean, with foils and printing processes, the labels, etc. That's actually very, very similar to making a cell, a battery cell. Obviously you're swapping out cocoa powder for lithium powder and various other very expensive minerals, but some of those processes are similar. And so what we've done at Avira is we've mapped out the whole of the UK. We've figured out where the gigafactories are likely to go. We've looked at the companies that are making things in FMCG. So whether you're making cakes or biscuits, pizza bases, these all involve powders, albeit sugars, flours, salts. It's a recipe. We've looked at deposition processes. So this is printing processes. Every time you open a microwaved meal, and you bang your fork in to pierce the top, if you look on the lid, there'll be a date on there. That's gone through a printing process, very, very high speed deposition process, which is similar to how you apply slurries onto foils. I've used the example in the past, but putting the electrolytes in, it's not too dissimilar to putting vinegar into a sachet. So we look at what we call these near neighbor parallel industries, look for the skills there, bring them over to the gigafactory. There's two things that therefore happen. One, they're not quite perfect because they haven't come from a gigafactory. So they do need some training. And there is training and there are establishments, organizations available to do that. But secondly, they're coming from industries and they're not quite a perfect match. But guess what? They might know other ways of doing things. So rather than just repeating the past and doing it how Panasonic do it or how LG do it, we do have an opportunity in the UK to look at new ways of doing things, whether that's using new processes like additive layer or new materials such as graphene. There are different ways of making these what are now 30, 40-year-old design lithium-ion batteries. So there are advantages to the UK in not having a gigafactory industry because we're actually bringing new talent in, new ways of doing things.
That's interesting. And do you see potential, there's new technologies and new ways of doing things, but are you recruiting only in the UK or is it also abroad as well? Do you see people applying from other countries wanting to work in the UK, if that makes sense?
We are definitely seeing people from other countries wanting to work in the UK. I think ahead of a clear direction on Brexit, that has been made more difficult. It's not clear where people stand with regards to visas, whether it's from inside or outside of Europe. So that is potentially a limiting factor. It's a shame because there are companies in Europe that would be able to provide very strong engineers for us, but it is what it is, and we can work with that. With regards to Avira working with other European companies, we have been approached and we are talking to them. We're a relatively young business, and to be honest with you, we're flat out in the UK at the moment. We are having talks with our investors about setting up European offices and offices further afield because we do think that this is a service which is typically lacking within the recruitment industry.
And so, okay, so going from there in terms of recruitment in the UK, is there been a difference with Brexit? Obviously, it's an ongoing process, but do you feel that that's potentially changed the outlook within the UK when it comes to recruitment?
There's probably three different ways that you could look at that. I think you could look at the automotive industry as a whole and how it's going to impact the automotive industry. You could look at investment and you could look at skills. I think, fingers crossed, if there are no tariffs in selling vehicles into Europe, then there shouldn't be too much of an impact. And I think the Europeans have as much of a reason to not have those tariffs as we have. It works both ways. So you would hope that that won't be a major disruptor. Secondly, looking at investment, it definitely is a problem. I have a lot of conversations with fairly senior industry people, and decisions have definitely and are definitely being delayed with regards to moving into EV, where that investment will be. Hopefully, we're a matter of weeks away of finding out where we all stand, whether we get the result that we want from Brexit or not, or the companies get the results that they want or not. At least we'll have clarity, so we'll be able to move forward. But things have definitely been put on hold. From a recruitment perspective, to be honest, Brexit is a disaster for us. The free movement of skilled engineers throughout Europe has been fantastic. It's enabled European OEMs and tier one suppliers and British OEMs and tier one suppliers to tap into pools of engineers who have the freedom to move between country to country when there are peaks and troughs in development programs amongst different OEMs. The teams of engineers have been able to move around. It's frustrating that that might not be possible moving forwards. Probably more worrying is the signal it has sent to the wider world, which is almost, we've closed our doors, and we're losing a lot of graduates that would be coming from the Far East, India, US, will now rather go to Germany or other European countries to study rather than the UK. So we're losing that cross-pollination that we used to have. So yeah, I think from a recruitment perspective, it's definitely a limiting factor. I would say that, you know, I value engineers, good quality engineering, no matter where in the world you come from, and particularly with the gigafactory hat on. All of the gigafactories, all the cell manufacturing has been done in South Korea, Japan, and China. You know, up until recently, obviously with Tesla and a couple of European plants, all of that expertise sits in the Far East, and it would be wonderful to be able to bring people in from further abroad or just from Europe.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. I was going to say, who knows? Maybe these trade agreements might be coming into place. Like, for example, the trade agreements with the US, and maybe from there with the Far East, which might have not been possible in the past. Maybe is in the future. Who knows? I'm not a politician to say the least, but you never know. That might actually open up some new doors that might have not been there in the past. But on that, I would say finally, in terms of on that subject, going forwards in the future, how much of an impact do you see also the 2030 ban impacting, you know, people who want to work in gigafactories or in terms of battery manufacturing within the UK? In other words, do you see this being kind of accelerating growth even more? I know you said at the beginning of the interview that there's more of a increase of that, but do you feel it's going to be accelerated past that 2030 line? So let's say if we're going in 2040, do you feel that that's going to be even at a much higher level than it is now?
I think definitely this announcement is going to accelerate things. I think COVID has changed the world in many ways. One of the things it's made us do as a nation and as a planet is to look at nature and the environment and the impact that humans have on the environment. There is a lot of debate around the environmental impact of electric cars and just how much of an improvement it is over good diesel or good petrol cars. I don't think the debate will go on much longer. The batteries are getting better and better, and the way that we produce electricity in the UK and further afield with renewables such as solar and wind turbines, it's becoming obviously better for the planet to run electric vehicles. Yes, it's going to accelerate much faster, driven not just by legislation, but driven by demand. You know, I think it is. We are at a point now where if you say to people, is your next car going to be electric? A lot of people are thinking about it. And that's what we need. You know, people are starting to think about it. Maybe my next one will be electric. The sort of technology that the engineers are working on now will be on cars in 5, 7, 8, 9 years' time. The engineers are way ahead of what the market can actually see. You know, the work that has gone into the I-Pace, which was obviously released in the last couple of years, that started years ago. You know, almost 10 years ago they started to think about this. So the performance and range that you get in an electric car now, it is improving at a dramatic rate. So by 2030, range anxiety, you know, getting 600 miles out of your car, charging it up in 10 or 15 minutes, I think these problems will be solved.
Yeah, can't wait for that to actually happen and see what happens. And for those people wondering why I've got the Bentley behind me, is because I think you've also mentioned yourself that there's in your written piece that if people are interested can read in the description below, is that you said that even manufacturers such as Bentley have premium type of company is also moving their focus towards electric and looking to also do it. So yeah, with pretty much all manufacturers, from luxury to budget manufacturers, moving there. Hopefully we'll come to a point where, yeah, as you said, like potentially in 2030 or 2040, you're getting 600 miles, maybe even more on a single charge, and you can charge up in, let's say, 10 minutes. I don't think many people will really be bothered about that all too much. So, yeah.
And the thing is, Chris, it's not just cars. The gigafactories will be making cells. You start off with cars, then you go commercial, vans, then you're into HGVs, then you're into off-highway. You only have to look in the news and you'll see companies like JCB fully electrifying their whole range. Trains, trains have been electric. Many types of trains have been electric for a long time. The London Underground, it works. It's proven technology. And then flight, aircraft. It's inevitable. It's a long way off, but it's inevitable. On an Airbus A380, you can quite comfortably cruise at altitude on one jet engine, but it's got 4 jet engines. That's to get you off the ground and to cut through the thick, soupy air that we find at ground level. You could have 3 electrics and 1 jet engine. You get up higher up into the atmosphere where the air is thin, switch 3 of the jet engines off. You could cruise along on a single jet engine with solar panels on the top of the wing to be fully charged. So aerospace is coming too. It will apply everywhere. And then another massive area where we're going to see cells will be in grid balancing. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, the national grid is geared up so that at half time at the interval on Coronation Street, when everybody puts the kettle on, it's to supply peak demand. You don't need as many power stations if you can store electricity for peak demand. Unfortunately, solar panels don't necessarily work, because when the lights go off, when the sun goes down, the lights come on. So you need batteries. When the wind's blowing, you might not need the electricity at that particular moment, but 2 days later, you might have a cold chill, but the wind's stopped blowing. So we're going to need to store all of the renewable energy into batteries to supply the grid as well. So these cells, they're the same cells. It's the same cell that you'd find in your toothbrush, in your mobile phone, is in the car, in the aircraft, in the national grid. These gigafactories will be making cells for all of those purposes.
It's truly fascinating, isn't it? All these different technologies, all using battery essentially, and how it can change the future. So yeah, can't wait forward to seeing what happens. So Steve, thank you so much for taking time on the call. And again, for those people interested, you can check in links in the description below, both to Steve's company and indeed what you guys do, and also the article that you kindly provided also in terms of providing some commentary on it. So it's very intriguing. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Steve.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for listening. Cheers.